at least one of whom mentioned my name. Our third story in the countdown. Oh, here we go. First, it was the warnings to NBC Chairman Robert Wright, then the phone calls to NBC President Jeff Zucker, then the petition to get me fired and Phil Donahue brought back, then the erroneous ratings information he gave out. Even in that context, though, this is pretty special. Ted Baxter telling uncooperative listeners that he'll turn their phone numbers over to Fox Security and that Fox Security will in turn contact the local authorities. Bill thinks he has his own police. A caller got through to O'Reilly's radio show yesterday. He insists he used no foul language, that all he did was mention my name, compliment my show, and ask, "Why are you always smearing him, Bill?" And the host, using the dump button all talk radio shows have and the 7-second delay, cut him off. We're not certain what actually got on the air, but this was what was posted on O'Reilly's website as the air check for that part of the show.
Orlando, Florida. Mike, go.
Hey, Bill, I appreciate you taking my call.
Sure.
I like to listen to you during the day. I think Keith Olbermann's show.
There you go. Mike is he's a gone guy. You know, we have your phone numbers, by the way. So if you're listening, Mike, we have your phone number, and we're going to turn it over to Fox Security, and you'll be getting a little visit.
Maybe Mike is from the mothership.
No, maybe Mike's going to get in big trouble because we're not going to play around. When you call us, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, we do have your phone number. And if you say anything untoward, obscene, or anything like that, Fox Security then will contact your local authorities, and you will be held accountable. Fair?
That's fair.
So just all you guys who do this kind of a thing, you know, I know some shock jocks, whatever, you will be held accountable. Believe it. We'll be right back.
Fox Security. Hannity and Combs come to your house with billy clubs. Now, there is a serious part to this. What do you mean we have your phone numbers? What do you mean you'll be getting a little visit? It's a radio show. Even if a caller swears, it's a radio show. Radio show over here, trip to Gitmo over there. Several of the callers now claim they have been contacted by someone identifying himself as the director of Fox News Security. We'll get to the legalities in a moment with a former prosecutor. First, there's this giddying aspect of seeing the host's trolley coming completely off the tracks merely when my name gets mentioned. This is how bad it is. Go to the O'Reilly website now, and the call from Mike in Orlando has been expurgated, erased from the website.
We'll be right back.
You're in the No Spin Zone with Bill O'Reilly.
Which raises one more thing. You may recall Shepard Smith on his afternoon newscast on Fox News on Monday.
And take a live look in the back of the newsroom. The floor mat says the spin stops here. And look at that. O'Reilly is schooling somebody on his staff. Turn it over to Makita, his longtime assistant. And now he's asking the cameraman, "You're not putting me on television, are you?" There is anger. No, O'Reilly's angry. Where's Olbermann? Let's just throw something at Olbermann, Bill. See you in a minute. We love you, Bill. Thank God for you.
She likes it, too.
I wonder if Bill got Shepard Smith's phone number and turned it over to Fox Security. As we mentioned, this little trip into the parallel universe of Bill O'Reilly does underscore a fascinating point. He seems to think, or wants his listeners to think, that if they don't cooperate, they can get into some kind of legal trouble with Fox Security. Joining me now, former Connecticut State Prosecutor Susan Filan. Thanks for your time tonight.
Hi, Keith.
Having done call-in, I've done call-in radio off and on since 1975. I thought I knew this thing pretty well. The caller can only get into trouble if he threatens a violent or illegal act, right?
The only person that's going to get in trouble here is Bill O'Reilly. He's lost the plot entirely. To think that you can commandeer local law enforcement to be your personal henchman because you don't like something a caller said on the air is absolutely outrageous and absurd. It's an abuse of the media. It's an abuse of law enforcement. And he's now the one engaging in threatening behavior. You can't do that. He's crossed the line. What did the caller say that's obscene? Keith Olbermann? I don't think so.
The people behind this, and as much as I'd like to claim I'm behind this, I'm not as smart as Howard Stern is. The people behind this say that one of their callers, spinners they call themselves, actually got calls today from somebody identifying himself as a former New York City policeman who is now director of Fox News Security, who advised that organizer that if you call anyone too often in this circumstance, you can be charged with harassment. Is that a scare tactic, or is there anything to that particular claim, the idea of harassment?
I think that's a scare tactic, because what is too often? If one called and said every single day, I love you, and he likes your message, is that too often? Is it only too often when he doesn't like what you're saying? The harassment here is coming from Bill O'Reilly to that caller. That caller calling up and saying your name on there. How is that harassment? It's a public radio show. He's inviting people to call in. That person has a First Amendment right to say your name on the air. Bill O'Reilly doesn't have a First Amendment right to threaten a visit from law enforcement as if this person's committed some kind of criminal behavior. Bill O'Reilly has crossed the line and lost the plot.
Well, he has a long history of trouble when it comes to phones, but that's another story entirely. Is there a scenario with a call-in show, if you're obscene, if you're actually personally threatening the host and you've called in a number of times? Is there anything? Is there some line that you can cross when you're being asked to call into a radio show to be a participant?
Of course, one's First Amendment right ends where somebody else's nose begins. You can say what you want to say, but you can't use threatening behavior. You can't say, I'm going to kill you. If something like that is said on the air, that's clearly a threat. That's more than harassment. There can be an on-air stalker, but can you really tell me that calling into the Bill O'Reilly show and using the name Keith Olbermann is harassment, is stalking, is crossing the line, incites violence, is obscene or foul or illegal? I can't understand it. And for a host to threaten the power of the media, Fox News' security force, to call local law enforcement to knock on your door and say, hey, buddy, you're in trouble because you said Keith Olbermann's name on my show is patently absurd. And the only one that's going to get in trouble on this one is Bill O'Reilly.
Now, to be fair, when I was at Fox Sports, I had a stalker, constant phone calls. There were trips, attempts to get in the studio. To their credit, and with my everlasting thanks, they had a team in place to deal with this, and they dealt with it very effectively. They dealt with it legally. They dealt with it even physically to intervene. They get a lot of training because Rupert Murdoch owns them, and he gets like a death threat a day. So that's one thing where aggressive attitudes towards potential stalkers or people who are genuine threats is applicable. But now let's flip this thing on its head here. You mentioned Bill O'Reilly threatening a caller on the air, or this director of Fox News security phoning a caller at home or at work and saying, you know, you'll be getting a little visit. Is there seriously a potential legal risk here? I mean, could Bill O'Reilly, could Fox News be charged with harassment of some sort?
Well, I think that this has to be investigated. I think if Bill O'Reilly, in fact, made that threat on the air and, in fact, followed it up with someone from Fox Security and, in fact, local law enforcement was called, I think that has to be investigated because that is an abuse of Bill O'Reilly's power, and it's an attempt, literally, to commandeer local law enforcement to be his personal henchman so that he can be the censor, the arbiter of what's allowed to be said on his show. How can it be illegal? How can it be a crime to say Keith Olbermann on the Bill O'Reilly show?
Well, you'd have to know him. Former Connecticut State Prosecutor Susan Filan, great thanks.
It's a pleasure.
One last thing. We all know Mr. O'Reilly cannot stop himself from responding. Fail in this business for 25 uninterrupted years, then have a success, and you do wind up a mixture of paranoia and a Napoleonic complex. So I'm going to save him the trouble. I'm going to respond for him. Bill O'Reilly answering this story. The abuse of the airwaves is a critical problem with which the First Amendment... MSNBC's ratings are a disaster. Nobody pays attention to them. I do. I watch. Addicted, unable to change the channel, but they're a disaster. So don't pay attention to MSNBC. Nobody watch MSNBC. Nobody is watching MSNBC. If you watch, we have your phone number, by the way. I'll turn it over to Fox Security. I told you I'd shoot, but you didn't believe me. Why didn't you believe me? Okay, and just so we get this ratings thing cleared up, if you want to know what this is really all about, on the air, Billy called this the key demos, and Fox's owners call it the money demo. Here are the official ratings, adults 25 to 54 for Wednesday night of this week at 8 p.m. Eastern. O'Reilly, 309,000. This program, 231,000. Nancy Grace Knows What You Did Last Summer, 131,000. Paula Zahn, now 81,000. Our audience was 75% of Ted Baxter's. It ain't perfect. Then again, he's been on for nearly 10 years, and we're still a month away from our 3rd anniversary. So, now I'm expecting that soon I'll be getting a visit from the Bill O'Reilly police, armed with loofahs.